Fala aí, rapaziada, como é que vocês estão? Eu sou o Bruno Borges.
E eu sou Gabriel Souza e nós somos a Brasil Bodybuilding News.
Rafael Brandão é o melhor atleta Open da história do Brasil e ele liberou novas vagas para o seu time de consultoria online. Ou seja, se você quiser mudar o seu shape de uma vez por todas, tendo dieta, treinamento e protocolos 100% individualizados para você, entrem para o Brandão Team. Seja natural ou hormonizado, a evolução é garantida do Team Brandão. E você ainda tem benefícios exclusivos, como o Meeting do Brandão Team, um encontro com Rafael Brandão na academia dele com outros membros do time, onde você pode conversar com o Brandão, ser avaliado presencialmente por ele e fazer aquele treinão na caverna. O link para o Brandão Team está na descrição do vídeo. Utilize o cupom BBN para ter desconto em qualquer plano, seja mensal, trimestral ou anual. Dito isso, vamos pro vídeo de hoje.
O canal Impressionante, que é o maior canal do mundo de notícias sobre fisiculturismo, o americano é um importante comunicador no cenário internacional e recentemente ele opinou sobre Ramon, Wesley e Cbum. O Nick diz que não achou o Ramon tão impressionante assim naquelas últimas atualizações dele, falou que o Wesley está impressionando mais e também falou sobre este anúncio que o Cbum vai fazer. Antes de deixar para vocês tudo o que ele falou sobre o Ramon e o Wesley, bora falar rapidinho sobre o que ele disse do anúncio que o Cbum fará na próxima segunda-feira. Basicamente, ele não adicionou nada de novo, apenas comentou sobre as teorias mais comentadas. Ele disse que não acha que é algo empresarial, porque não é o tipo de marketing que o Cbum faria para um produto. Ele disse também que pode ser a aposentadoria dele após esse Olímpia, mas disse que seria muito mais épico anunciar isso em cima do palco. Ele disse que com certeza não é uma ida para a Open e por fim ele questionou se o Cbum poderia estar fora do Olímpia deste ano, ou seja, basicamente o Nick apenas rodou e não afirmou nada. Agora voltando a falar sobre Ramon e Wesley, o Nick, apesar de elogiar o Ramon, diz que não está vendo o Ramon tão impressionante assim como em anos anteriores e que as atualizações do Wesley estão impressionando mais. Confiram só o que ele diz.
Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the latest physique update from Ramon DINO. And it's crazy to think now we're already 5 weeks out from the 2024 Mr. Olympia. And I think these updates are pretty significant because we really haven't seen much from Ramon during the course of this Olympia prep. Obviously, the last time that we saw Ramon on stage, the Arnold Classic, where there was that massive upset and he was defeated by Wesley VISSERS. Ramon was a little bit off there. Wesley was on, arguably at his all-time best, and I think that decision really changed the conversation going into this year's Mr. Olympia. Obviously, Ramon has been the runner-up for a few years now. He's been the guy that a lot of people have talked about as just being next in line, heir to the throne of Chris Bumstead. Chris, we're going to talk about in a minute here. And I think the question on a lot of people's minds going into this year's Classic Physique Mr. Olympia is, will Ramon still be that guy that's right there pushing Chris, or will it be somebody new like Wesley VISSERS? Because Ramon did show, I think, pretty significant weakness in his armor by being defeated by Wesley VISSERS. Now, in these updates, to be fair, you can't really see much. There's one picture where he's showing off his midsection. You can see his serratus, his intercostals. He seems like he's in pretty good shape. But overall, he's in a tank top in most of these updates, and you can't really tell much about what kind of shape he's in. I mean, obviously, he looks full. He looks big for a classic guy, which typically in his prep pictures is, what we say. He's typically well over the weight limit at various points in his prep. So he usually does look pretty big for a classic guy. And of course, when we look at these updates, we've also got to consider Urs, who we haven't really seen much from, so it's really hard to have any judgment of what his physique is looking like during this Olympia prep. We can go off what we saw at the Arnold Classic Ohio. You got to think about Breon as well. But when I'm looking at these updates from Ramon, they don't really jump out to me like some of the updates that we've seen from him in past preps where he's got a freak factor to his physique and he looks really big and really vascular and he's hitting most musculars and looking like, how is this guy going to make the weight limit? I'm not really seeing that in these updates. And I was looking at some updates from Wesley earlier today. And these were from a few days ago, so not exactly 5 weeks out, so not an apples-to-apples comparison with Ramon's updates. But when I look at Wesley's updates, I feel like it has a lot more freak factor or wow factor to them. They really stand out more as far as his conditioning, his detail, the pop to his physique, which is really big and a really good sign for Wesley. And I kind of have the feeling going into this year's Mr. Olympia that Wesley is going to upset a lot of people. Because keep in mind, at last year's Mr. Olympia, he was 7th, which is a good placing. That's a good Olympia placing to be. You're in the top 10, almost in the top 6, kind of in the conversation. So 7th is a really good placing, but based on his victory at the Arnold Classic, he kind of leapfrogged everybody from 7th to Chris that would stand in his way between 7th and being runner-up. And I think that was a really big win for him and a really big loss for Ramon. And I kind of feel like Wesley is going to be in that top 2 conversation. If he's not in the top 3, I would be very surprised. And one of the reasons I say that is Wesley even posted today a comparison on his story of 2024 Arnold Classic prep versus 2024 Olympia prep. So less than a year in between these two pictures. And I think, again, you can see that he's made, visible improvements from his Arnold prep to his Olympia prep, which is really big when you consider the fact that pretty much everybody is saying that was the best Wesley we'd ever seen at that Arnold Classic Ohio, and he had improved a ton just for that show. And it looks like even from that best ever appearance, he's improved upon that. So I think really there's no doubt in my mind, if Wesley looks better at the Olympia than he looked at the Arnold Classic Ohio, I think he'll be top 2. And again, there is something to be said that Ramon was off at that Arnold Ohio. So maybe if Ramon is on at the Olympia, maybe it's a different story between him and Wesley. But I think you got to remember Urs and Breon, they were also at the Arnold Classic Ohio. Wesley also beat them. And I don't think they were really off. I think both those guys looked good. So Wesley beat a pretty good version of Urs, pretty good version of Breon. How much better could Urs and Breon look at the Olympia this year to beat Wesley? I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a bigger margin for Ramon to improve to beat Wesley. But if you consider that and Wesley looks better than the Arnold at the Olympia, I think that still puts him in the top 3 conversation. Even if he doesn't beat Ramon at the Olympia, I think he'll still be right there in the mix unless something goes horribly wrong. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What are your top 3 Olympia predictions in order for classic physique? And that might change depending on what the next story ends up being. So let's get into the next story here.